Hi there, Redneck Preppy with you, and today a video about a question that I get asked a fair bit, and that is, should you be firing collectible firearms? My answer depends on who's asking. I find when it comes from a non-gunny, what they're usually asking me is a question from a safety perspective. Is it safe to shoot really old firearms? I actually did answer that question in a video that I made back in April 2020, and if you want to watch that video, there's a link in the description below. When the question comes from a gunny, I usually take that question to mean, should you be firing firearms that have an economic or historic value? So, back a few years ago on a Canadian gun forum that I belonged to, one of the users asked a question about a pair of firearms that he had bought years earlier. Now, back in the dying days of the Lee Enfield No. 4 Mark I, they were essentially manufacturing these rifles, slapping them in Cosmo, wrapping them in that brown lovely paper, and putting them into storage. Years later, they were surplused, and a lot of smart buyers picked up a couple of them. Now, anyone who has these rifles has unicorns. Unissued Lee Enfields that, outside of proofing, have probably never been fired. Now, the forum member had two of these rifles, and he wondered if he should take one of them out of the wrapping and shoot it, but leave the other one in its pristine condition. That question provoked heated debate amongst the other forum members. Some were saying, go for it. Guns are made for shooting, and you've still got that other one in its pristine condition, while others argued that even shooting one round out of one of these rifles was essentially destroying its value from at least an economic perspective. Ultimately, I don't know what the lucky owner did, but it was an interesting question. Guns are made for shooting, but at the same time, he had military surplus rifles that were in a condition that most people had never seen. Absolutely brand new. So what is my take on this? Well, here's my clear and definitive opinion on the matter. I don't know. Depends. Before we begin, though, let's stipulate a few things. First of all, most collectible military rifles aren't valuable. Millions of the things were made, millions survived, and millions were surplused onto the market, and in a condition that are oftentimes heavily used. If their value has been increasing in recent years, it's largely because, I would argue, that most people are beginning to realize that they're not making any more of these things, and people are holding on to what they have, which is reducing supply in the marketplace. Not because people are realizing the inherent economic value of these rifles. Your bog standard Mosin Nagant M9130, though it is pricier than it was a few years ago, isn't going to be a retirement vehicle. Second, defining the term collectible is tricky. I would argue that you can divide firearms into two very broad categories, shooter grade and collector grade. Shooter grade firearms are, as the name implies, are in a condition that you can basically take out to the range and have no compunction against shooting them. While collector grade, which is where the real money actually lies, gives you pause before taking it out to the range. The problem lies, though, on where in that continuum you put the line that divides one from the other. I'm going to be honest with you, I haven't the foggiest idea. Judging rifles on either end of the quality continuum is a little like Potter Stewart's view on obscenity. I know it when I see it. It's that gray middle that's the area of the problem. Fortunately, I guess, real value kind of lies at the far end of the collectible side of the line. That top 10% of rifles that as soon as somebody sees it, they know it's a marvelous example and they would love to add it to their collection. I'm speaking broadly here, but at the 75 to 80% grade mark is where you start to see the price rise. And the higher the grade, the faster the price increase. As you can see from the graph, and admittedly it's an approximation at best, as different rifles have different price curves, the price difference between a 90% grade rifle and a 100% grade rifle can be enormous. Of course, other conditions can trump pure condition. If you own a truly rare firearm that's sought after but in extremely short supply, condition might not even be a factor in price. I've seen incomplete and broken firearms, but supremely rare, go for massive amounts of money. Incidentally, if you are curious about the grading of firearms, I'll include some links in the description below and you can go and read up on it. It's a rabbit hole that I don't really want to go down too far in this particular video. So from an economic standpoint, if that's a consideration for you, no, you shouldn't be shooting truly collectible pieces. I would argue that if you want to go out and shoot an example of a firearm that you own that's in truly collector grade condition, go and buy a sporter grade or beater rifle that you can bring out to the range and pound out rounds all day without really worrying about it. There are plenty of sported Lee Enfields out there that you don't have to use a beautiful example of one. If you want to go buy a modern clone of an M1911, then shoot a World War I dated example, I think that's a good idea. If you own an intact Ross rifle, you know what, maybe leave it in the gun cabinet and go and buy a sported version, of which there are many. In fact, probably most of them are. I think looking at it from a purely economic perspective, however, it might be a little short-sighted. If you have all the money in the world, you probably don't care if you shoot your World War I M1911, because you can just go out and buy another one. Lucky you. I think another reason, though, equally valid, is not to shoot truly collectible firearms, is because as owners, we're custodians of history. I know it's a little pretentious, but I don't care if they made 40 million Mosin Nagant M9130s. They haven't made any new ones in my lifetime. They're not making any more of these, and while your particular firearm may be the same as millions of others, it still has a story to tell. It still is a piece of history. It has lessons to teach, and it has an intrinsic value outside of just simply money. This isn't an indictment, though, of those people who do fire rare or collectible firearms. I wouldn't dream of knocking C&R Arsenal for firing an extremely rare and valuable Pedersen device-equipped M1903 Springfield, as they have done. Heck, I have to admit, I'd shoot one at least once just to experience it and to learn why the U.S. Army dropped it as quickly as they could. You just need to be cognizant of the risk that you're taking with a legitimate piece of history that can't be replicated, or at least not easily. At the end of the day, though, the firearm is yours, and you can choose to do with it what you will. Chances are you're not the first person to own your firearm, and previous owners probably didn't give a tinker's damn about its economic historical value. And maybe you don't either. Guns are, after all, made to be shot. That said, take a serious look at what you have and decide if what you own is special enough that maybe you don't want to shoot that particular example at all. Whatever you do, though, stop bubbaing the damn things. Seriously, no more Tapco, ATI, or Choate stocks on your SKS 45 or Mosin Nagant M9130s. Enough. Stop it. That's just a personal aside. At any rate, that's my opinion and worth what you paid for it. What are your thoughts? I'd be interested to know, so please feel free to leave a comment in the description below. If you liked the video, please feel free to give it a like. If you didn't, dislike's good too. If you want to see more videos from me in the future, feel free to hit the subscribe icon and the bell notification icon so you can be sure to be notified of future videos. And finally, you can find links to all of my social media platforms in the description below as well. I hope you have a great day, and may your shots, out of shooter grade firearms only, please, ring true. Have a great day. Take care.